everyone. Miss Carol here. So glad you joined me today as we continue our lessons on Elijah and the wicked King Ahab and his queen Jezebel. Let's do a little review. If you remember last week, God had sent Elijah to the town of Zarephath because there was that famine going on in the land. And so he told him the brook had dried up, and he said, I want you to go up to Zarephath. Well, remember we talked about where Zarephath was because he's over here in the Kerith Ravine. Zarephath is up here, but who's king over there? Jezebel's father is king over there. So they all worship Baal up there, don't they? And I'm sure Elijah's wondering why God wants him to go up there. But he's trying to keep him safe, isn't he, from the wicked king and queen down below, right, in Samaria. Well, we know that God sent him to a widow. Now, remember, a widow is a woman whose husband has died. And this widow, he found her. She was out picking up sticks. And the Bible says she told Elijah these sticks were for her to make a fire and to bake her last loaf of bread with the last of the flour and the oil that she had. And then she and her son were going to die because they would starve to death after that. But Elijah asked her to bring him that loaf of bread she baked. And if she would do that, he said, the God of Israel will provide more flour and more oil for you for as long as it's needed. And she had quite a decision to make, didn't she? Because she doesn't know Elijah. She doesn't know Elijah's God. She knows Baal. And yet he's saying, don't worry. My God's going to provide for you. All you need to do is have faith and go ahead and bake that loaf of bread and give it to me. And in the end, we don't know what she was thinking, if she thought, well, one loaf of bread isn't going to save us from dying anyway. And if this man is right, and we can have bread for as long as we need it, then maybe I need to take that risk. But for whatever reason, she does exactly what Elijah tells her to do. So she bakes that loaf of bread for him. But sure enough, there, as you can see, God has provided more flour in her jar and more oil in her jug for her. And that continued. She was able to feed her family and Elijah for as long as was necessary. And then you remember one day that her son got very sick, and he got so sick that he stopped breathing and died. And she goes to Elijah and she says, please help me. Help me. And so Elijah says, give me the boy. And he took him upstairs to the upper room on the roof of her house where he'd been staying, right? And he laid the boy on his bed and he prayed to God to please make the boy live again. And then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and he prayed again, God of Israel, please give this boy life again. And he did, didn't he? And the boy started breathing again. So he carried him down to his mother. And she was so grateful. And the Bible doesn't tell us, but I just imagine that she realized Baal was no God at all. But Elijah's God was a true God and had power, and he could not only heal and provide food, but he could raise the dead. And remember also that this is the first time ever recorded in the Bible of God raising anyone from the dead. And that's this boy. Now, of course, we're going to read quite a few other times when God did that later on. But this is the first time ever recorded that God did that. So now let's keep on reading. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 18 and start with verse 1 and see what God has planned for Elijah. After a long time, in the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. And it had probably been about 3.5 years since there had been any rain. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. Now this can't be good, right? Ahab's trying to kill him. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had called Obadiah, his palace administrator. And Obadiah was a devout believer in the one true God. And while Jezebel was trying to kill off all of the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had secretly taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each cave. And he had supplied them with food and water. What do you think would have happened if Ahab or Jezebel had found out that their palace administrator was secretly going against them and saving those 100 prophets? I don't think his life would have lasted long, do you? But he was brave, and he knew that's what God wanted him to do. So Ahab had said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs and valleys. Maybe we can find some grass to keep our horses and mules alive, so we will not have to kill them," because there was no food for them. So they divided the land they were to cover. King Ahab went in one direction. So here they are deciding, okay, let's go search out and see if there's water anywhere, if there's grass anywhere, so that we can bring our horses and mules to give them something to eat. So it says that Ahab went in one direction and Obadiah went in another direction. And as Obadiah was walking along, Elijah met him. Obadiah recognized Elijah right away, and he said, "Is that really you, Elijah?" "Yes," he replied. "Now you go tell King Ahab that Elijah is here." "What have I done wrong?" asked Obadiah, "that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be put to death? As surely as the Lord your God lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master the king has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed that you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. But now you tell me to go to my master King Ahab and say, 'Elijah is here'?" He's saying that all the time Elijah was gone, they were looking for him, going from one nation to another and making the king swear that he hadn't seen them. "I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you when I leave you. And if I go and tell King Ahab and he comes back here and he doesn't find you, he will kill me. Yet I, your servant, have worshiped the Lord since I was a child. Haven't you heard, my Lord, what I did while Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord? I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets in 2 caves, 50 in each, and I supplied them with food and water. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, 'Elijah is here'? He will kill me." Elijah said, "As the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I will surely present myself to King Ahab today. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right here and wait for you to bring him back, Obadiah." So Obadiah went to meet King Ahab, and he told him, "Elijah's here. He wants to meet with you." So Ahab went to meet Elijah. Do you think he's very happy about this meeting? So when he saw him, he said, "Is that you, you troublemaker of Israel?" "I have not made trouble for Israel," said Elijah, "but you and your father's family have. You have left the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals, the idols. Now call the people from all over Israel and bring them to meet me on Mount Carmel. And bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah and all those who eat at Jezebel's table. Oh boy, Elijah says, we are going to meet. We're going to meet and we're going to see whose God is real. Now here they are in Samaria, but here is Mount Carmel. And if you see, it's right on the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm sure they had a view of the sea right there from Mount Carmel. So that's where he says, gather all the people together. That's where we're going to meet, right there at Mount Carmel. So Ahab sent word throughout all of Israel, and he called the prophets to Mount Carmel. And Elijah went before the people. And Elijah said, how long will you go between two opinions? If the Lord is really God, then follow him. But if Baal is the true God, then follow him. But quit trying to go back and forth from one to the other. Make up your minds. Decide who you are going to follow and be true to. But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets that's left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Now, we know that Obadiah has saved 100 of them, right? But Elijah can't say that, can he? Because if he told that, then Obadiah would be killed, wouldn't he, for saving them? So then Elijah says, get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and prepare it. And I will prepare the other bull and have them put it on the wood, but don't set fire to the altar, to the wood on the altar. Then you call on the name of your god Baal, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And whosoever God answers them by fire, by setting the wood on fire, that's the one who is truly God. Then all the people said, what you say is good. What you say is good, we'll do it. And Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull and prepared it, and they put it on the altar. All right, so he's challenging them to a contest, sort of, isn't he? You pray to your god Baal to come down and light that fire on the altar. If he is real, tell him to do that for you. And I'm going to do the same thing with my God. And we'll see whose God is real. And so, here's what the Bible says happened. Then those prophets of Baal called on the name of Baal from morning until noon. Baal, answer us, Baal, they shouted. But there was no response. There was no answer. Well, I wonder why. Baal is nothing but a piece of stone, a rock, carved out of wood, maybe covered with gold, but he's not real. He can't do anything for them, can he? He's just a worthless idol. But there was no answer, and they danced around the altar that they had made. And at noon, Elijah began to taunt them. He started trying to make them realize what they were doing. And he said, why don't you shout louder? He said, surely Baal is a god. Perhaps he's deep in thought. He's really thinking about something. Or maybe he's just busy. Or he could be traveling. Maybe he's away on vacation or something, right? Or maybe he is sleeping and you must awaken him. Boy, he's really letting them know your God's not real. And so they listened to Elijah and they shouted even louder. And they cut themselves with their swords and spears like they would always do when they worshiped. And soon noon passed, and then the middle of the day and the middle of the afternoon came, and they just continued, and they were getting frantic about it, dancing all around and yelling for Baal, until the time of the evening sacrifice came. But there was no response, no answer from Baal. No one answered. No one paid attention. Of course not. Elijah's showing them he's not real. You're worshiping a worthless idol. And now Elijah says to all the people, "Come here to me." And they came to him. And he rebuilt the altar of the Lord, which they had torn down years before. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descending from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Your name is no longer Jacob, you shall now be called Israel." And with the stones, he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a big trench around it, large enough. And then he arranged the wood. He put the bull on the wood, and he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water, and pour it on the offering and on the wood." Now, wait a minute. You can't build a fire. You can't make a fire with wood if it's wet. It won't burn. What is Elijah thinking? Now he has them pour 4 large jars of water over that wood. I mean, nothing's going to burn. And then he says, "Now, do it again. Go get 4 large jars, pour the water over it, do it again." Oh my goodness, this is never going to work, is it? And then he said, "Do it a 3rd time." And they did it the 3rd time. And the water ran down the altar and even filled up the trench at the bottom. Do you see? There's so much water, there's no way that's ever going to light. There's no way. And at the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you are the Lord, you are God, and that you are trying to turn their hearts back again to you." And then, you're not going to believe what happened. And then fire fell from the Lord, and that fire burned up the wood. It burned up the sacrifice. Oh, but that's not all. It burned up the stones, the dirt, and then licked up all the water that was in that trench. Now, wait a minute. Stones don't burn, do they? No. Dirt doesn't burn. No. Well, it does if God tells it to, doesn't it? He made it. He can say it's going to burn if that's what he wants it to do. He's all powerful, and he was proving that to his people. I am God. Look at my power. Look at my awesomeness. And when all the people saw this, they fell down before him, and they cried, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." Then Elijah commanded them, "Grab the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." And they grabbed them. Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley, and he had them all killed, all those wicked prophets of Baal. Then Elijah said to King Ahab, "Go and eat and drink, for I hear the sound of heavy rain." So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel. And there's the Mediterranean Sea. You can see that. And then Elijah bent down to the ground and put his face between his knees, and he began to pray. And then he told his servant, "Go and look toward the sea." And the servant went up and looked. He was looking to see if there was any sign of rain. And he said, "There is nothing there." 7 times Elijah sent him back up to look. And at the 7th time, the servant said, "There is a cloud. There is a cloud as small as a man's hand that's rising up from the sea." So Elijah said, "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." And meanwhile the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, a heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off. But the power of the Lord came on Elijah, and he tucked his cloak into his belt, and he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. Can you imagine outrunning horses pulling a chariot? But he ran faster than them. God gave him special power that day. He's running to tell Queen Jezebel what has happened. Do you think she's going to be happy about all of her prophets of Baal being killed? Ooh, I don't either. I don't think things are looking good for Elijah right now. But God showed his power, didn't he? We have a worksheet for you about Elijah and the prophets of Baal. I want you to be the best that you can be this week. Look forward to next week. We'll find out what in the world is going to happen to Elijah. All right. I love you. I miss you. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.